Rhona Hotchkiss is a former prison governor and joins me now. Rhona, you're very welcome to the breakfast programme. Thank you so much for joining us. This manhunt underway for Daniel Khalife, the former army soldier, computer specialist, he broke out of Wandsworth before 8 o'clock on a Wednesday. I think yesterday, I think that a lot of people will ask the question why he was in a Category B prison when he was originally in Belmarsh but was moved. What do you make of that, Rhona?
Well, obviously the categorisation of prisons is something that happens in England and Wales, not Scotland, so it's not the system that I'm most familiar with. However, I believe he went to Belmarsh and was risk assessed there, and it was determined that he didn't pose high risk to the public, and that would have information would have come from the police. So on those grounds, it's not unreasonable that he was moved to Wandsworth.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've been behind the walls of Belmarsh Prison. I used to be special advisor to the Justice Secretary, former Justice Secretary Sir Robert Buckland. And there's no real way out of Belmarsh. It's a very, very secure prison. Wandsworth clearly wasn't. What sort of checks, when you were prison governor, when there were vans coming in, when there were deliveries and so on, what was the kind of procedure that went through? And what do you think, obviously we don't know, but what could have gone wrong here?
Well, I think the point here is that the procedures that should have happened would apply whether he was in Belmarsh or Wandsworth. We're talking about a failure at the gate where all vans and lorries and so on come in and out. It's a very, very basic procedure that is followed with everyone. If I, as the prison governor, brought my car in and out of the prison, my car would be searched inside, and we would use the mirror device underneath to check for not just prisoners, but packages and so on. So it's a basic thing. The concern, of course, is that it's so basic, and it happens probably hundreds of times a day in a place like Wandsworth, that the concentration of staff slips, things get missed and so on. And that's not a prison officer trait, that's a human trait. What I would say is that time of the morning is the busiest for a prison like Wandsworth. There'll be dozens and dozens of vans and lorries coming and going, delivery lorries, people going in and out to court and so on. So it's probably the time that this would most easily happen if it was going to happen. It's also worth noting, though, what you were saying about security at Wandsworth. I believe the last person to escape from Wandsworth was Ronnie Biggs in 1965.
That was a while ago.
It certainly was. Even I don't remember that. So it clearly is a secure prison. And I should imagine that the governor's been up all night with senior staff trying to work out exactly how this happened.
How much of a complete nightmare is it when this happens for everyone, not just the people who are responsible, but for the whole management of the prison and further up the chain? Did you ever have an escapee?
No, there hasn't been an escapee from the Scottish Prison Service in decades and decades. It's just so unusual. I mean, escaping under a van is something that if it wasn't so serious, it would almost be comical. It's like something out of an old black and white movie, you know, from the 30s. You can imagine someone like Jimmy Cagney strapping himself under some trundling lorry coming in. It's not funny, but that's the sort of level. It is so basic. And I can imagine that every first line manager in charge of security at prisons is wringing their hands this morning thinking, how did that happen? There's definitely been some kind of error or negligence or whatever. And of course, the police will be incredibly concerned that there's some kind of collusion going on here. Because if you were going to do this in a prison, between 7 and 8:30 in the morning is the time you would do it. There's no doubt about it. But I haven't heard any hint that has happened on this occasion.
Yeah, I mean, it is very, very embarrassing. And I wonder, I mean, there are all sorts of problems in the prison service. There's overcrowding, there's crumbling prisons, there are so many issues here. But do you think that's anything to do with this necessarily? Are there wider sort of implications, or does it say anything about the state of the prison, or could it just be one or two people not doing the job they're meant to do?
Well, it could be both. I mean, Wandsworth is chronically overcrowded, and I dare say that the staff complement will not have been raised to match that overcrowding. Now, if you get overcrowding in a prison like Wandsworth, which deals with remand prisoners, people coming and going to court, of course it's going to increase the traffic in and out. And the more traffic you have coming in and out, the higher the risk is that something like this will happen, because people are rushed. There's a queue of vans and lorries outside. You're getting pressure from the courts to get people there on time. So I would say that in overcrowded prisons, this is more likely to happen and less likely to have been any kind of negligence or laziness by staff. More likely that they're completely run off their feet and that they're missing things.
Rhona, thank you. Rhona Hotchkiss there, former prison governor, speaking to us from her experience.